I've always loved helping people, but I've also always been drawn to things that are somewhat dangerous. So becoming a firefighter paramedic was one of the best things I could have ever done. Every day I go to work, I get the chance to help people. And from time to time, I get to do something that scares me. On my first day, on my very first call, we responded to a man in cardiac arrest. We arrived, he was lying on the floor outside of his office, surrounded by his coworkers. For 15 minutes, as we took turns pumping on his chest, he showed no signs of coming back to us. And we had an audience of people who loved him, watching our every move. We did everything. We put a tube in his throat so we could breathe for him. We filled his veins with every drug we carried. And just as I was about to lose hope, one of the guys on my crew announced, "He has a pulse." And everyone who'd gathered around us cheered. Now, it wasn't long after the first call, we got our second call of the day, another cardiac arrest. And then later, we went to a house fire. This was my first day of work. And yeah, we ran less exciting calls that day, but my abilities as a firefighter paramedic had been pushed to their limits, and I loved it. I was getting the chance to do what I had trained so hard to do the one thing that I loved the most, helping people. From the beginning, my dedication to learn my job has bordered on obsession, because I knew a day was gonna come that someone was gonna call 911, and it was gonna be up to me to figure out what to do. Out of firefighters, people expect the very best. So that's what I've strived to be in every class and in every drill. And by the end of all my training, I could carry a person twice my size down a ladder, or I could give you the contraindications to the 27 different emergency drugs that we carried. So when I was driving home after that first day of work, I knew I was where I needed to be, working at one of the busiest fire stations in my city. I kept asking myself, is every day gonna be like this? It's hard to say the word unfortunately, because I understand there's some pretty bad things that happened, but unfortunately every day was not like the first. You see, as the days went by and the calls added up, it quickly became apparent that a lot of my time was gonna be spent responding to those less exciting calls that are merely just a footnote of the story of my first day. Calls for unmanaged diabetes or uncontrolled high blood pressure, headaches, stomach pains, sometimes just downright abuse of the 911 system. Now you may ask yourself, how often can one person really call 911? To give you an idea, in 2015, nearly 20% of our 60,000 emergency calls were to the same 1,948 people. In our city of 212,000, that's less than 1% of the population. We transported one gentleman to the hospital 79 times that year, another 51 times. We had one guy that would call us every time he ran out of beer and cigarettes. No, we did not bring him beer and cigarettes. But I have made a man a sandwich at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because like I said, I love to help people, especially when the solution's easy. And to me, for most of these frequent callers, the solution was easy, if not obvious. But as obvious as they were, there was nothing I could do about it then. Because as a regular firefighter paramedic on a 911 call, if your house isn't burning down or you're not dying, we're typically limited to offering just 2 options. We can transport you to the hospital, or you can refuse transport and stay where you are. It's for this reason in 2016 that my fire chief decided we would try something new. And he put me in charge of it. Why me? I wrote a memo. Instead of waiting for the frequent callers to call us, we were gonna go to them, kind of like community policing. Except for trying to prevent crimes, we were gonna try to prevent medical emergencies. And it was gonna be simple. We knew who they were. I was just gonna go to their house and knock on their door and connect them to what they really needed. Those simple solutions that I'd seen so often on 911 calls. And there were 3. An appointment with a doctor, assistance with getting to that doctor, or assistance with getting their medications filled. With my plan ready, I went out into the city armed with a smartphone, ready to just show everyone how simple this could be. And then I was assigned my first case. A woman who'd been transported to the emergency room 13 times in 4 weeks, complaining of pain. Now, myself included, many emergency medical workers hear that. They hear of a person go to the emergency room complaining of pain, and we immediately assume that they're abusing the system in search of pain pills. Rehab was not one of my 3 simple solutions, and nor was getting her more pain pills. But not wanting to deflect the very first case that I was asked to see, I did what I was told and I went looking for her. Her name was Miss Brenda. Now, it took me 2 weeks to catch up with Miss Brenda. You can imagine when she heard a guy with a badge was knocking on doors looking for her, she probably didn't think it was a firefighter. But when we finally did meet, it was at her sister's house where she'd been sleeping on the couch for quite some time. She wasn't what I expected. For one, she was so nice to me. I expected that she was going to see me as an intruder, just barging into her life, telling her how to live. It was quite the opposite. She was happy that I was there. She brought me in and introduced me to her whole family. Second, she had no interest in narcotics. They weren't even on her radar because the kind of pain that she experienced was unique and that classic pain medications don't touch it. With our brief but pleasant introduction over, I sat down and quickly went into my questioning that was going to lead me to one of my 3 simple solutions. Miss Brenda, do you have a doctor? Yeah, I have a doctor. The appointment's 3 months away, but at the time, that was the best we could do. Miss Brenda, do you have a way to get there? Yeah, she used the bus, no problem. Miss Brenda, do you have your medicines? Oh yeah, she had medicine. She had bags of medicine. She had bottles that weren't even opened, tons of medicine. So I was confused. She had a doctor, she had a way to get there, and she had her medicine. Why was she calling 911? She just needed to take her medicine. Feeling a little less than satisfied that day, I left with a plan that I was just gonna stop by every time I was near her house and just urge her to take her medicine. My hope was if I could just hold on long enough to get her to her doctor's appointment, that maybe we could figure something out and put an end to these 911 calls. And my plan worked a little bit. Now, instead of calling every day, she called on my days off. And every time she'd go, they'd prescribe her more medicines and send her home with another generic set of discharge instructions informing her to follow up with her primary care doctor. Now, after weeks of this, I found myself getting frustrated because what I knew to do wasn't helping. But I didn't want to give up on her. Ms. Brenda was the first chance I could prove that this new approach could work. But it was more than that. We'd gotten to know each other. And I truly believe that she was trying to do better, if only to make me proud of her. So after a recent discharge, I went back to her house. We reviewed her paperwork, then went through her medicines again, showing what each was for and how much of each to take. And as always, she said she understood. And usually this is where I would leave her. But this time I just did something different. I just asked, Miss Brenda, will you show me how you take your medicines? She opened every bottle and started taking every pill down the line. I said, hang on a second. Now you know you don't take one of everything. She said, I know. I break this one in half. And the bottle said take twice a day. Now that sounds crazy, but it wasn't. She was supposed to break one of her pills in half. She had just chosen the wrong one. She couldn't read the labels. I remember then just sitting back and looking down at the plastic grocery sacks that held most of everything she owned. I listened to the interstate roaring past her front door. And I could feel the footsteps of every other person crammed in that tiny house. And it was as if at that moment, all those frequent callers were staring me in the face. How many people had I labeled as abusers of the system without even having any idea how their life was really like? How many people had called 911 for help and gotten me? Not the guy who loves to help people, but just a burnout emergency worker, frustrated that they weren't sick enough to where I could do all the things I had trained to do. And now here I was again, frustrated at a woman whose own personal struggle was beyond my comprehension. It was then I accepted the fact that my 3 simple solutions probably weren't going to work for Miss Brenda. And she might always have to call 911 for one reason or another. Because I could never have any idea how hard her life became the moment I walked out her front door. So I forgot my 3 simple solutions. Forgot trying to shove down her throat what I thought she needed. And I just asked her, what can I do? What can I do to help you? What can I do to make your life better? She had an apartment application in her purse. I helped her fill it out. And a few weeks later, she moved off her sister's couch and got an apartment of her own. Now, for the 6 months that we'd gotten to know each other, Miss Brenda went to the hospital 26 times by ambulance. For the 6 months following the day that she moved into her own apartment, she did not go to the emergency room a single time. We're still friends. I can't tell you why she stopped me in the emergency room after she got her own apartment. This obviously did not fix all of her problems. But I don't think it was a coincidence. See, the little bit of time that I got to spend with her gave me a little insight as to what her life was really like and what it was she really wanted. She wasn't calling 911 because she wanted firefighters, nurses, or doctors. She just wanted someone who cared. That's the key, if it's your job to help people. When it seems like the solution's hopeless, if you're there to serve, and if what your training is for doesn't help anything, you have to forget your job title, forget what you are, and just care enough to learn a little bit about who they are and what they really want. And even if you can't fix all of their problems, if you can make their life just a little bit better, you might be just the hero they've been waiting for. Thank you.